We'll go ahead and start our informational meeting this evening. Any committee reports from anyone?
Yeah, go ahead.
No.
Well, the finance is not a committee report, but as you've all read in the front page, the budget, SB1, is the talk of the town and nobody understands it, including me and our own city leaders. So we're all trying to figure it out. But to that end, we have a break. Our 26 budget will not be impacted by it. That's the one coming up that we gotta do. The 27, it will impact the 27 and 28 budget, but that'll give the General Assembly another year to go in and massage it, hopefully make it a little better. But right now, it's complicated enough that everybody I talk to just shakes their head. But we don't have to deal with it in the budget process this year. 27 and 28 could be brutal. I mean, literally brutal. So if you read the paper today, you know, they're really talking about 27 and 28. Okay? Just keeping it in perspective. Thank you.
No one seemed to have anything to say about it Saturday morning at the Central Breakfast. It was kind of funny how they really avoided that. And they kind of made, I was
That's 'cause they can't explain it either.
Well, they just kind of made a joke about it. You know, well, they're gonna let them.
They can't explain it either. When you sit down and talk to them. Okay, thank you, Mr. President.
Anything else from communication? Councilman Davis.
We'll just do the second reading of ordinance 7183. This is the ordinance that amends the previous ordinance 6619 concerning the sewer use and wastewater pretreatment. So what we need to do to be compliant with that.
Councilman Riku.
Just second reading of district flats. Nothing's changed since the first go around. I would expect that to be the district soon.
Yes, sir.
Council Corbin King.
Yes.
The floor.
Short timer.
I have the floor. All right, our ordinance 7186 on the convenient store. I have to say that I was taken off guard by the vote, or I would have stopped that earlier, in the sense of it is my belief that it is our obligation for fairness, if we're gonna vote an ordinance down, that we need to give specific reasons. And so, with that being said.
Is that a legal opinion or is that just general practice?
No, that's my legal opinion besides my sense of fairness, so it's both. So, with that, it is my hope that maybe during communication, and that's why the folks are here, because I said that at least they should hear what I have to say, that we should be on the floor, get it of record why we voted no, and if the yes people want to say why they voted yes, that's fine. But with that too, and someone asked me just before that meeting, why do we have the informational meeting? That's why.
Is there a precedence for that opinion? Do we have a precedence that we have to give a reason for our decision?
Not as an individual, as a group, we do.
Well, it's called statute 3674 603 and the case of City of Madison versus Demery. So yeah, I don't take this lightly. I don't have a vote, but when something comes up, that's why you pay me, is to look up the law, which I did, and that is why I base my opinion. Yeah, if you have lots of discretion on zoning, says it in the case, but if we're going to do this, we've got to give a reason why, because there's actually 5 things that we need to consider, and it says the Plan Commission and the legislative body shall pay reasonable regard. So it's not just the Plan Commission has to give their views. We have to do the same thing. And like I said, the informational meeting, if I knew it was gonna be controversial, you guys sit here and say, look, I'm gonna vote no, I could have said, cool, that's fine, but when we get out on the floor, we gotta say why we're voting no. And so that's why this meeting is really important, that we're honest in what's going on and let our feelings be known, because the bottom line is, Cleve over there, he's filming this. People are in here. If we go out on the floor, we're fine. That's where the vote is taken. But this is the domain where it helps me help you. And so in that sense, I will admit I was caught off guard with the vote. And once it was already taken, it was like, uh-oh. I would have told them, please, let's have a discussion and tell the petitioner why we voted their zoning ordinance down, which is in our prerogative, that we just have to give a reason.
So
That's
going forward, like, vote on X, Y, Z, and I vote no, I should say my reason for voting no at that time.
You could, because I had no idea, I don't know, I doubt that you all are talking about how you're necessarily gonna vote. You voted your conscience, which you're supposed to do. So yeah, from now on, I guess I would say, if you're gonna say no, why you voted no, because all of a sudden, yeah, you lose 6-3, it really doesn't matter because it's passed. But certainly I would make that a normal course of business here. But that being said, I don't know if we would have to do that if we're having this discussion we're having now about, yeah, I'm not big on this zone, I'm worried about the school kids. That's all you gotta say. And so when we say that, I say, all right, remember gang, this is something that we got a favorable recommendation on. We have to go and give a reason. So the public, and you're right, Tom, out of fairness, certainly. I think that that's important, that people come to us, and we've proven it. Our council's proven that we do listen to the people. You know, whether good or bad, sometimes they don't agree with our vote, but we've proven that we listen. And you know, I get mad at the citizens that way if they point fingers at you and act like you're not doing your job. That's a bunch of baloney. You've proven that you listen. Well, now that we listen, we also got to communicate just a little bit better. So I apologize that I froze when that occurred. It did take me by surprise. So,
I appreciate you saying that for me, because I looked at the statute and I went and read it, called some other municipalities. If we decide, if a constituent says, hey, it's a majority of them that don't want this, we can vote no as a legislative body. That doesn't mean that every time somebody comes with something that says, hey, they passed the planning commission, we must pass it. That's not true. And I've heard that over and over again that says, hey, if it passed the planning commission and it meets these, we must pass it. That's not true. We're voting on, make sure it's the rules and regulations correctly, but we also voting on what our constituents want. So if we decide to vote no, we can vote no. If we decide to vote yes, we can vote yes. No harm, no foul. We can look out for the constituents also.
So from now on, when we take a roll call vote and it goes negative, we should immediately go back and allow everybody to justify their vote.
I would rather you do it as you,
As we
As
vote?
you're casting your
Yeah.
vote.
Okay.
Verbally saying your vote.
right.
Okay, yeah.
And the whole thing is, if we know that it is a controversial, some aren't. I mean, we don't have to worry about that, but I harken back to of course, the smoking ordinance. It's a 5-4, we got, and that one tricked me, went against. But everybody said, I'm for it, and that one you had to, because you're like, here's why I think it's good, here's why it's bad. That's easy. You know, on zoning, it's not necessarily as easy, because you may have gotten a favorable recommendation and so forth. But from now on, if it's something that we are going to vote no, and certainly don't know the outcome of it, I want you all to verbalize to the crowd why you are voting. And also if you're voting yes. Councilman Davis did that, forget which one and before, and they kind of shouted you down, which was unfair. He said, well, here's why I'm voting yes, and the crowd unfairly reacted. Well, they shouldn't do that. You get it, we're up there, that's why we're elected, and their voice is at the ballot box, not in there. They gotta be respectful. I do not like when they're disrespectful to you all. You run for office if you wanna go and have a say or wanna vote on something. Don't get on my people here when they're just doing their job. Be respectful.
But as we take a vote, like David and I, we're the first two to vote, we have no idea. whether
Right,
it's gonna
that's
pass or not.
why I want you to say
So we
yes.
have to do this on every vote.
If you are, right, if it's gonna be a no, right, if you know it's,
You don't have to.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
right, because then if you say, because he's going all in favor, aye, then everybody says no, then you have the roll call. Well, you have the floor then.
Okay.
It's like,
It would just add a sense of communication if you talk to your other councilman before the meeting and had an idea what they're thinking, or maybe you wanna share what you're thinking, maybe you wanna talk to the council and say, no. But, it just facilitates that communication.
Sometimes you're on the fence, you don't know really which way
Right.
you're gonna fall.
right,
You know.
and that's fine. And then once they say, okay, make your call, then it's like, okay, I am going to vote no, and here are the reasons why. So that is my point perfectly. You all do listen. You're not rubber stamping anything. I know that you're not. And since you aren't, we're just gonna get a little better at that communication. And, this is where we start, right here, so we can convey to the public that, hey, we're on your side. We may vote against you, but we're doing it what we think's appropriate for the community as a whole. But here's why, or we're voting no because we think that this is a bad idea for our community. So no, and these things I look as an opportunity to get better. And I know where your hearts lie, and that you are trying your very best. So we're good, and me too. I learn something new all the time myself. Thanks for that.
Yep, sounds good.
Appreciate it. Well, and as Bill O'Mackey told me, it's amazing what you learn when you actually look up the law. So that's always kept me on the straight and narrow.
So on,
You go ahead, I interrupted.
so on today's agenda, are we gonna answer those questions, and where does that fall on the agenda?
Oh, yeah, for today, so we're.
I think it should be in communication because it's not on the floor.
Okay.
And Ray, I told him to say just we were caught off guard. It was an honest mistake, and for the benefit of the petitioner, we need to give our reasons for denying
Is
and
there-
have it a record.
Is there any formal reply that you'll be giving to them, or is it just verbally today? That's
Right, I just wanted, they're here, so I told them to come.
Okay.
So we don't, my formal reply might be, 12 pages or like this, whatever ordinance we've got today, where of course people's eyes glass over. We don't need to go that.
Well, this is the first time I've been a
deep.
part of any kind of question about why something happened, so I wasn't sure if there was a bit of a process that's a part of it.
Well, as Bill also used to say, Corbin, you're on the frontier of the law. So I have not been one where I am then saying, here's what we've done, we would like to explain why we voted that way. So this is the first for me in 36 years. So that's all right.
Oh,
There, right.
Corbin,
Like
can I say something? I mean, we were just caught off guard because we had 2 favorable readings prior.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why we were so caught off guard. I didn't even show up for the meeting because it was a done deal. And
So
then,
you had there should have been 2 favorable readings.
He's talking about.
He's talking about
planning.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
thought you meant for the
And
actual
then I came to the
council.
second.
I'm sorry.
and then, and we only had 1 representative from Maple Crest. I mean, I lived there, only 1 guy was there. So I think that's why we were confused.
Well, we've been told,
You live in Maple?
when we're not
Yeah,
sure.
I live
to vote
right
yes
up
on the
Boulevard.
first reading,
Always.
And then
Right.
that gives us a chance.
Always.
Yeah, the first reading is an opportunity, we get this information Thursday before the meeting. So we have between then and today to start looking into it, and then once we have the first reading, we've now got 2, sometimes 3 weeks to kind of dig into it a little bit more, which may then have an impact upon how the vote goes, because we become more educated on the topic or the item that's being presented.
And that's on my advice. I tell them that they look at me sometimes like, I really don't wanna vote for this. I go, it's just first reading, please, vote for it. And then that's why Ray, if he sees, he'll go, remember, only first reading, you can come back. I know it's hard to understand for the citizens what our procedure is, but yes, and I thank you, that is exactly why they do pass things on
I
first
appreciate
reading.
having that extra time.
Right.
Yeah, me
So-
too. Sometimes these are fairly complicated.
So, so for me, when we always emphasize that we're only voting on the rezoning.
Mhm.
So then I'm having a hard time understanding of what the rezoning is, which sometimes, like we saw in the letter, there was questions. A lot of the concerns were questions that were going to be for the site plan. So how do we differentiate what we're voting on and not negate it into the site plan and voting on that?
Here is the separation as I've always had it. And that is, the zoning has got nothing to do with the usage. You're zoning that piece of property for multiple usages. It could be doctor's office, it could be anything, not a convenience store, not a drive-through store. Now, the site plan and the application from the planning commission, that's different. But when we do, an ordinance to approve zoning, it's, if you look at the book, the zoning book, it's pretty voluminous. And it could be a one of any of those. I mean, I've had it in my neighborhood, you know, 1.5 acres. It could have been a gas station, convenience store. Everybody was up in arms, but we can't vote on that. We vote on what's the usage of the piece of property. And that's what you're voting on. Is it commercial? Not necessarily an insurance office, a doctor's office, convenience store, and it's outlined in the book, right?
Well, it is, but just like in this case, when it says exactly what it's going to be, that's what it's going to be. Now, that doesn't mean down the road somebody couldn't sell that property and it could become something
Or it could
else.
become something else.
Sure, sure, sure.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I would be,
Yes, sir.
I would be remiss, and Councilman Stewart is absolutely right. All the planning commission does is send a recommendation to this board. That's all we do.
Right.
But I don't want to make that sound like we don't take that seriously, because we do. My staff, when we get a rezoning request, we look at everything. We look at the surrounding zonings. We look at what's been there. We look at what's there now. We look at things just like the neighbor said. Are we going to make them put in sidewalks? Are we going to do this? So our staff looks at all that, and I can tell you, there's been many times, I've been doing this for 15 years, and there's been many times when people came into my office and wanted to rezone something, and I told them, I said, you're wasting your time and your money, because this isn't gonna happen. What you wanna do here is not going to happen. So when we give a recommendation, you know, I don't take it lightly, my staff doesn't take it lightly, we look at it. That doesn't mean you have to agree with us, that's not what I'm saying, but I just want you to know that when somebody comes in, and site plan is the same way, we look at it very, very carefully. And do we make mistakes? Of course, everybody makes mistakes, but we do look at everything as carefully as we can. We try to give all of you the right information. I mean, I was in your seat for 8 years. You want the information that you can get to make a informed decision, and I get that, I understand that completely. And that's what we try to give you.
To answer your question, Ray, it is a process, so I am a process guy. So yeah, we have our zoning, and we're allowed elected to vote how we want to, but then there is site plan, and Greg is right. They take it seriously at the planning commission. I had this conversation not a month ago, didn't I, about we're all in this together. And so that is one of those things that when something goes awry like that, I don't like pointing, fingers at anybody either, because everybody's trying their very best, and Kokomo's been very fortunate that way. But yes, I'm a process guy to try to let it go through the channels, but I'm just the attorney. I don't have a vote, even though people think I do, so
I'm not talking about letting it go through the channels. I'm talking about, and we all got that sent the letter to everybody, of what they said the reasonings were, the people that got up and spoke, what the reasonings were, drainage and whatever. Is that part of the rezoning that we're voting on? Is it part of the site plan? That's what I'm asking. So when they come and say, when you give your reasons, and Tom said there's a wide, then I hope that falls within that scope of, because I wanna know what we can say no to on a rezoning. That's
That's a good question. We're not dealing with the site plan.
I think, I'll bring this up, I'm not saying any of us are guilty of this, but when we had the first meeting, the first reading for that ordinance, there were 6 of us there.
Yeah, Tom was gone.
Because there was spring break, and we addressed that in first reading. And one of the issues that came up, and it came up the second time, and it's the drainage issue. And I had met with Greg, and he gave me a memo from the guy that there is no drainage issue there. I read it during the first reading, during that meeting.
You did.
So here's my point. If we happen to be gone, there were 3 of us missing that day, and please, I'm not throwing a rock, I'm just saying, if we're missing, out of due diligence, we should go back and look at the previous meeting. If there's a second reading coming up, and we should be prepared and not wait till that night, if that happened, to be prepared so we know what the issues are. When the guy brought up the drainage again, I wanted to look at him, I wanted to tell him, you're beating a dead horse, we've talked about that. I read the report, there is no drainage issue. So I guess my point is, we weren't all there, we should catch up. If we're gonna be gone and miss a meeting, we should go back and look at the council meeting, see what we missed, if we did miss any, and then be prepared to answer those things. Cause that's the things he brought up, of course it was lights and it was noise and kids and sidewalks and drainage, but some of those things he was wrong about. He just was.
But some of those things the constituents are right about, and so I take that in consideration. So I can read and write like anybody else, but if a constituent says something to me, and I look it over and I talk to 3 or 4 of them, I'm not going back on not supporting them in these decisions anymore.
Yeah.
If that's what they feel in that area, I'm gonna support them 100%.
And all I'm saying is that in a preview of what we're voting on, or if that's supposed to go to, that's what I'm saying, is it in what we have a reason to say no to? I wanna know that, because Tom said it's a wide, if it's not about drainage and the things that they have said, then is that not allowing them to go to the due process of going to the site plan? Are we voting on something that we're not supposed to be voting on? It's not in our preview to vote on a rezoning.
Well, and ultimately, the petitioner has the right
That's what I
to
would-
go to court, and the judge is gonna decide whether our decision was based on appropriate facts or not.
And
That's all.
here's the answer to your question, 3674-603. Preparing and considering proposals, legislative body, reasonable regard to the comprehensive plan, current conditions and the character of the current structures and uses in the district. The most desirable use in which the land in each district is adapted. A conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction and reasonable development and growth. I don't see drainage in there. You're asking my opinion. Right there, you can talk about, they brought up property values. Okay, that's one of ours. We're pretty limited. I personally do not think it's a free-for-all. I don't. That is why we have a process. So those are the 5 things by statute says shall, and I believe that that's what we have to stick to. If we don't, and that's where I talk about getting out of our lanes that gets out of our lane a little bit. But again, I don't have a vote, and you all gotta do what you gotta do, so.
Well,
Sure.
Can I read
Less
something
than a
that I
minute.
wrote about this?
6 o'clock.
I write better than I talk, you know. But part of it is, I said, I firmly believe as a member of the Common Council, I carry the responsibility of balancing the broader interest of our city with the specific needs and concerns of neighborhoods directly impacted by zoning decisions. In this instance, I concluded that the safety and established character of the neighborhood outweigh the potential commercial benefits of rezoning. This decision reflects my commitment to prioritizing the well-being and quality of life within our neighborhoods while still remaining open to responsible economic growth.
Yep, that's
So,
fine.
You know, I think we have that, you know, we have to balance.
Yeah.
You know, and just because 50 people show up out here and don't like it, you know, you have to listen to that, but that can't, you know, you get 50 people out here to protest anything. So we have to kind of take that and measure it.
Yeah, exactly, and if it were just because of the fact it's zoning, then there's no reason for us to even have it. You know, if they approved it, period, then there's no reason, in my opinion, for us to even be voting on it.
Right,
If that
so
is
then we
the
need to
only
look at
thing.
those criteria, property values, things like that. Yep.
And listen,
Yeah,
council
fine.
people shouldn't tell other people that everything's a done deal. Make that a practice in the future, all of it. And
I'm not sure I knew that happened, but anyway.
Yes, that does happen. I understand your situation.
I'm not,